Good evening, everyone. We'll call this meeting to order at 6:01. And right now, we'd like to humbly acknowledge the land in which you live, learn, work, and play is Treaty 8 territory, traditional lands of the Cree and Dene, and unceded territory of the Métis people. And you'll notice today the council is wearing pink. That's in recognition of Pink Shirt Day, which is tomorrow. The Regional Municipality of Buffalo is committed to fostering a safe and inclusive community. Acts of bullying, discrimination, harassment, intimidation, and violence have a profound effect on the individual's feelings of safety and self-worth. Today we are wearing pink to spread the message of kindness and encourage others to wear pink on February 28th to address bullying against children, youth, and adults by speaking up and advocating to others. For the record, we have Councillor Grannison and I believe Councillor McGrath joining us online. Councillor, should you have your video cameras turned on for voting reasons, please? If anyone in attendance wishes to address council on any of the agenda items, please register to the right of me at the Legislative Services desk. I will only be calling upon those who are registered to speak, and following your submission, please remain seated for questions. You must register before the start of the agenda item. You have 5 minutes to speak, and please introduce yourself before you start your topic. Before we drop the agenda, does anyone have any wish to serve any notice of motion? Can I have someone make the motion to adopt the agenda as presented? Councillor Stroud?
Thank you, Mayor Bowman. I move that the agenda be adopted as presented.
Thank you, Councillor Stroud. Someone second that motion? Thank you for seconding the motion, Councillor Ball. I'll call for a vote.
In favor.
And Councillor Grannison voted in favor. And that's 7-4-0 against. Thank you, Council. Moving on to the consent agenda. Does anyone wish to remove any items from the consent agenda? Not seeing any here. Can I have someone make the motion? Councillor Dogar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the recommendations contained in items 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, 3.4, and 3.5 be approved.
Thank you. Thank you. Second, Councillor Weigel. I'll call for a vote.
In favor.
Thank you, Councillor Grannison. Thank you. That's carried unanimously. Next, we have the report, the KPMG organizational review. I'd like to invite KPMG representatives. They're joining us via Teams. Scott Fielding, Ricky Soni, Bradley Lehman, Carol Moreno, and Lam Lee. To introduce the report, please.
Well, first of all, thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. My name is Scott Fielding, and I'm the engagement partner for KPMG on the organizational review, and I'll be introducing our team shortly. First, I'd like to thank your administration for the assistance throughout this engagement. There, of course, has been lots of change in the organization, as there always is in municipal councils. And our work is based off extensive consultation with staff, over 78 hours of engagement with Wood Buffalo staff, surveys, of course, with over 500 response, and also working sessions with senior staff, as well as bi-weekly meetings. The full report was over 670 pages, and we have a kind of a highlight deck that we're going to go through over the next little while. And each member of team will make some presentations. Overall, Mr. Mayor, the presentation will be about 20 minutes or so. Now, I just want to introduce our team quickly. Again, as you mentioned, Ricky Soni was our project manager, Brad Lehman, as well as Carol Morano, were stream leads in public sector and infrastructure, as well as Lam Lee, who's our analyst for it. And, in terms of the agenda here, Mr. Mayor and Council, hoping to review the approach. And really, that's how the report was designed. The main areas of the report based off similar types of engagements that KPMG and others have done really across the country. We'll review the findings of the service inventory and service level. So really what that's going to tell members of council as well as your constituents things like which services are above average and below average in terms of municipal service delivery in both the rural and urban context for the municipality, which services are core or mandatory types of services, and which services are done in-house versus extended or external providers. So really what you're going to get at this, and you will, Mr. Mayor, is a roadmap of appropriate services and where decisions can be made for taxpayers to support and having the best services possible. Next, we're going to go into an organizational design analysis for the senior levels of the organization. That really gives recommendations based on best practices and structure to make sure you're appropriately aligned and taxpayers are getting good value for their money. And this will make your organization more efficient and more effective and allow council and things to get done quicker for residents as well as for councillors who represent them. Most of the recent changes were based off some of the work that we have done throughout the process over the last number of months. And finally, we'll come up with there's 11 significant opportunities for improvement for the organization and an implementation roadmap that really outlines some timelines, some critical path forward. A review identified really key issues that are really fundamental or foundational, I guess I would say, to progressing the organization along the maturity. And a part of this, I will turn over to my colleagues, but there is obviously opportunities for consolidation of types of services as well as alternative service deliveries and things like use of nonprofits as well that can make the organization more efficient. With that, I'll turn over to my colleague, Ricky Soni, to walk us through the process.
Thank you, Scott. Good evening, everyone. We began our journey with Buffalo almost a year ago now, back in April 2023, to undertake this organizational review. And we had 5 core objectives. The first was to develop the municipal reference model that was tailored for this municipal context. And Lam was going to talk quite a bit about that with respect to the services as well as the service catalog, which was the second objective here. With that, we developed the list of services, the activity, and as Scott mentioned, whether the service is delivered by the municipality directly, a hybrid approach, or by external partners. We undertook some benchmarking that was comprehensive with respect to the potential opportunities, as well as the organizational structure, to look at how other municipalities are structuring themselves, but also acknowledging that Wood Buffalo is unique. We identified, as Scott mentioned, 11 opportunities that Bradley is going to talk about in some detail, and each opportunity is accompanied by a unique and tailored implementation roadmap. Some of those changes have already begun within the organization, some are to be begun. And throughout that journey, we had exercised a 5-phase approach with key milestones along the way, including the co-creation of a methodology to make this approach very Wood Buffalo specific, while bringing a standardized methodology where we've done these projects with other municipalities. So with that introduction, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Lam to talk about the service profiles.
Thank you, Ricky. The service inventory includes 10 programs, 59 services, including both public-facing and internal services, and 144 sub-services. It was created using the municipal service hierarchy, as noted on the image on the right, which is a framework to understand services provided by Buffalo from the viewpoint of the customers. The framework follows a top-down structure to define municipal services, from program to service to sub-service to activity level. Service role is defined along the continuum of core to non-core, with core being that the service delivery is mandated through legislations or deemed necessary to ensure the safety of the residents and staff, and non-core being that Buffalo has discretions to decide whether to provide the service. Service level is defined as whether a service provided by Buffalo is below, equal to, or above what is usually provided by comparable municipalities. This is based on an internal assessment with inputs from staff who are directly involved in the oversee and delivery of services. And service delivery approach defines whether the activities involved in delivering a service is primarily handled by municipal staff or external providers. Moving on to the next slide, please. The service inventory with a service-based perspective can provide a range of benefits to organizations. It could help improving engagement with residents on how they're experiencing service delivery. Organizations could communicate with residents on the cost, priority, and expectations of public-facing services, such as snow clearing, for example. Another potential benefit could be improved service level performance, as organizations now has the ability to set relevant performance measures for each service. These performance measures can define the targets for both operational performance and customer experience. The service inventory could also assist with improving budgeting and decision making. For instance, it provides transparencies in resourcing, including costs and human resources required to deliver services, such as curbside collection service at the current service level of weekly collections. Can we move to the next slide, please? The following is an example of a service profile showcasing the evidence of the work that we have completed in collaborations with your organization staff. The comprehensive set of 59 service profile has been provided to Buffalo as part of the project final report. Moving on to the next slide. On this slide, we present a snapshot of the service level statistics, which is part of a more comprehensive summary dashboard, which has also been provided to Buffalo as part of the service inventory. Looking at the charts on the screen, it is evident that the majority, approximately 80% of sub-services, are being delivered at an average service level, with some variations between the urban and the rural service delivery context. Moving on to the next slide. Apart from the majority of services at the average service level, there were 22 sub-services, about 50% of total, that were assessed to be currently delivered at an above average or premium service level in either urban or rural context, and vice versa. There were 12 sub-services, about 8% of total, that are being delivered at a basic or below average service level. Examples of sub-services with above and below average service level will be presented on the following slides. But before we get to that, I will ask if any of my colleagues wants to provide additional comments on this slide.
Yeah, I guess I would say this is a really important slide to the presentation, again, of the 144 types of services that you provide. Really what this is showing in a kind of listing of things, the ones that are above average or above premium levels of service, that's about 15% of the services combined. And again, you can look at the listing there. And then the respect of the bottom, so that's services that are below average for either the rural or urban context. So that's about 8% or 12 sub-services. And again, we've broken them down to about 144 services. So this is an important roadmap for you to either improve services or look at service levels that may be premium that council can make a decision one way or the other. And like I say, this just provides a bit of a roadmap, and there's some reasons why services may be higher or lower depending on those contexts, but it gives you a nice outline of things to look at for a budgeting process or in terms of service levels for citizens.
Mr. Lamb, I think Councillor Ball has a question while you're on there on your topic. Councillor Ball?
Thank you, through the chair. I get this is going to be a bit of a lengthy presentation and lots of information, so I don't know if asking questions midstream is the right plan here or not, but in a previous slide, it has the benefits of service-based perspective, and we talk about one of the benefits of having improved engagement with residents, and it tells us what it allows or how does this allow us to do it? But there's nothing that says what we need to do. And if you look at the slide that you just had up, oh, I didn't mean for you to go back, sorry. It tells us that we already performed that at an above level. So I'm a bit confused on what that message is.
Perhaps I can start with an answer of that if this is the appropriate time through the chair to the councillor.
Sure, please.
Yeah, okay. So the idea of defining service profiles as well as defining their service levels in the current state isn't about whether it is good or bad. Some municipalities will provide above average level of service that's defined by council in a very cognizant way. So what we're showing to you, councillor, is a way to think about your service delivery to allow you to compare an apples to apples viewpoint of service levels amongst all services provided. So there are reasons why you as a council will choose to provide an above average service, and there'll be reasons why you may want to choose to provide a below average level of service. And this becomes ideally a decision-making tool for you to use to make those types of decisions. So it's not a good or bad, it's just, it is what it is for today. And this is helping you paint a picture for improved decision-making as a council through your administration.
Okay, so the first slide isn't suggesting that we improve our engagement with residents. It's just a bullet point.
Correct. This is a current state
Fair enough.
reflection.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and one more question from Councillor Dogar, and then I think we'll let the presenters finish their presentation. Then if you just want to make a mark on where you want to ask a question, we'll come back to questions at the end. But I'll let Councillor Dogar ask a question quickly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It may not be quickly, it may be question after question. My first question is to the administration, and maybe you can reply me in the end because they are more important people. First question is, I think what all changes has been done, fine, it is a very high-level organization, and these executions started in middle of
Councillor
December.
Dogar, maybe wait till they finish the presentation, then we can go to that if you want. They still have quite a bit left more to present.
So execution was before and now it has come for approval. And my question is, thank you, sir. It is a very, very nice presentation, very high professionals. I'm listening, certainly it is educative. So this presently the changes are doing, it is according to the KPMG recommendations? This is my first question.
Is that, so Councillor Dogar, are you asking a question of the CEO or the KPMG presenters?
No, they must be knowing how the changes are doing it.
Yeah, they're presenting their report right now. So do you want to wait till the end of they finish the report and then you can ask questions?
So I have questions about the manpower, how they have dished out the manpower, because
We haven't got to the end of the presentation yet.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. If you want to continue there, please.
Thank you. Can we move on to the next slide, please? The following is an example showcasing how the service level was being assessed for the parks, natural areas, and special use areas provision subservice. The above average service level is a combination of the scope of service and capacity, with scope being the number and variety of parks, playgrounds, skate parks, sport fields, and other service offerings available to the residents. And capacity refers to how frequent these facilities and service offerings are provided to the residents. Moving on to the next slide. On the other hand, here we have an example of the capital planning subservice with a below average service level. Similarly, it's a combination of the scope of service, which identifies that some planning documents are lacking or outdated, and the capacity, which identifies that due to capacity constraints, capital planning services are not reliably provided to the department in a timely manner, and planning documents are not reviewed and refreshed on a regular basis. Okay, move on to the next slide, please. So on this slide, we look at the service row and service level concurrently. This provides an understanding of the subservices that may merit further discussions when the organization is looking at changing services, which could be those that are not mandated or essential to be provided, but are currently delivered at a high level of service, or vice versa, those that are mandated to be provided, but are currently delivered at a fairly basic level. The services that fall into these buckets are identified in the red boxes on the chart that you can see in the screens. For instance, the scheduled transit subservice is one with a discretionary service row, but is currently provided at an above average service level in rural area, and is not usually offered by other municipalities in similar geographical contexts. Moving forward, it is also important to ensure that the service inventory and service profile remains relevant for organization decision-making, as the service profile are intended to describe the current status of service delivery at a point in time. Buffalo may consider incorporating regular updates to service inventory as part of the planning and performance monitoring cycles. And other future considerations could be to validate the service level into assessment through season satisfaction surveys for public services. Buffalo may also consider conducting cost of service exercise to understand the required level of resourcing to deliver services at corresponding service level. Now I pass it to my colleague, Carol, to talk about the organizational design analysis.
Thank you, Lam. So looking at Wood Buffalo's organizational design was another important part of this review. which aim to reduce overlap among positions, enhance role clarity and communication, improve administrative process efficiencies through collaboration, and increase organizational performance through a more nimble senior leadership structure. Our approach to analyzing the October 2023 organizational chart included several consultations with the CAO, analysis of the number of direct reports at that management layer you see on the screen. Having completed those 59 service profiles that Lam walked us through, we considered the logical groupings of staff based on their roles in service delivery for those service profiles, as well as leveraging the preliminary opportunities for improvement themes and benchmarking, which was conducted across 6 comparator municipalities. Our key findings from this analysis included the identification of a high number of direct reports to the CAO position, which with the vacancy of the deputy CAO position was up to 21 direct reports. And that was high compared to the typical range of 5 to 9 direct reports, which we've seen for senior municipal leadership roles. We also noted that the organization's vertical structure was noted as contributing to less collaborative and interconnected teams through siloed operations, inconsistent communication, and we saw high variation in the number of senior leadership direct reports, ranging from 2 all the way to 15, with about half sitting outside the typical range. We also saw there was inconsistent leveling across departments and branches. And essentially, we saw some branch leaders were at the same organizational level as department leaders, despite the differences in the breadth and complexity of their portfolios. And finally, we saw a mix of organizational design approaches present. And so that included functional design, divisional, as well as the components of a geographic model. And this mix appeared to contribute to inconsistencies in the level of centralization and decentralization across the organization. And so what you see on the screen here is the result of those findings. KPMG proposed in our report to administration, an updated senior leadership structure that includes leveling the number of direct reports among senior leadership positions, a consolidation of logical portfolios of services under each department, and the introduction of new branches to address priority service areas that were identified in that service definition phase. Those new branches for Wood Buffalo's consideration are Organizational Performance and Project Management Office. Those are proposed under the Corporate Services portfolio, as well as Asset Management, which is proposed under Financial Services. And Bradley's going to expand upon the asset management area as part of our opportunities for improvement. So as I mentioned, our analysis was based on a point in time. It was based off of the organizational chart provided to us as of October 2023. And we are aware that changes to the organization were made in November. So some of those changes may align with the structure that KPMG has offered, as you see on the screen. And there may be other observations, suggestions, and options that we included in our report to administration that could provide alternative areas for future consideration. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Bradley so he can summarize the opportunities for improvement that we detailed in our report.
Thank you, Carol. Improvement opportunities were identified through an employee survey, staff consultations, and the service profile development. A funneling framework was used to identify and categorize these opportunities, which were prioritized using criteria established in a workshop with senior staff in July. The criteria included cost savings, service consistency, optimization, staffing, and stakeholder feedback, among others. This yielded 16 opportunities, which were then recombined into the 11 shown here after further input from staff. These foundational opportunities were then evaluated based on an anticipated benefit, ease of implementation, financial impact, and risk. Next slide, please. I will now briefly go over each opportunity. Organizational governance involves the establishment of a governance structure to better define council and administration's role in decision-making and information sharing for municipal services. This structure will facilitate improved interactions between the two entities, aiming to enhance governance and operational efficiency. Councillors, as elected representatives, often receive and respond to feedback from various stakeholders. However, there's confusion about the appropriate engagement between council and administration. The high volume of requests from council often distract management and staff from service delivery, causing duplication, productivity loss, and service inefficiencies. This opportunity seeks to refocus the relationship between council and administration to an optimal level of involvement that supports good governance and operational efficiency. The second opportunity speaks to the establishment of an enhanced framework and processes for monitoring and reporting on performance. This includes defining expectations for effectiveness and efficiency across all service areas and implementing a service review or value for money audit program for periodic detailed reviews. An internal audit function could be established to foster compliance and accountability. In our survey, staff indicated an apparent disconnect between required and available resources to meet service delivery expectations. Performance management can help this by both setting expectations as well as unbiased monitoring of the progress towards those expectations. The planning cycle opportunity is designed to streamline Wood Buffalo's business and resource planning processes. It aims to create a unified approach to program and service planning that aligns with strategic plans and vision and extends to business plans, budgets, and service level planning. Current methods suffer from inconsistency and lack of integration, leading to disjointed decision-making and poor coordination between departments, negatively affecting customer experience. The planning cycle opportunity should offer a clear path from council decisions to operational actions that drive service delivery, aligning strategic priorities with resources and service expectations, and service coordination. The structural realignment and responsiveness opportunity is one that has started already and advocates for a revised organizational structure to boost collaboration and mutual responsibility. It recommends decreasing the number of senior leaders directly accountable to the CAO for more efficient and agile decision-making. When we began our engagement with your organization, there were as many as 21 direct reports to the CAO, surpassing the ideal range for municipal leadership and hindering the CAO's mentoring capacity and responsiveness to emerging issues. Staff feedback highlights a deficiency in interdepartmental coordination and awareness, with the current structure promoting departmental isolation. Proposed changes aim to unify branches under each senior leader and foster collaboration among service leads, tackling the compartmentalized approach to service delivery and decision-making. Wood Buffalo should develop and disseminate a workforce strategy connecting municipal objectives, resources, and the plan to fill gaps between the two. This may include succession planning, resource allocation for staff development, and incorporating mentorship and training into annual reviews. Evaluating Wood Buffalo's attractiveness as an employer, considering compensation and policies, could be advantageous. Wood Buffalo's overall vacancy rate of 13% exceeds the provincial rate of 4.2% as of Q3 2023. While the overall manager to staff ratio of 1:7 is generally acceptable, some departments have higher ratios. The June 2023 employee survey underscored capacity issues due to vacancies and recruitment timelines, with specialized position recruitment being notably difficult. Stakeholders recommend enhancing staff retention through learning and development, succession planning, and flexible work arrangements. The sixth opportunity would involve raising the maturity and awareness of asset management to align asset management activities with strategic and business plans. The current lack of a formal asset management system results in disjointed asset renewal planning activities across departments. Existing asset management plans, last updated in 2018 and 2019, are becoming obsolete and aren't utilized for capital or maintenance planning. The expired 2019 asset management policy lacks a framework tied to corporate goals. This lack of coordination can lead to asset failures, reputational harm, safety issues, operational risks, and missed investment opportunities. Municipalities built in economic waves may face disrepair if infrastructure renewal surpasses capital budgets. If not managed prudently, as the infrastructure associated with these waves matures and reaches end of life, municipalities can be faced with intense periods of disrepair as the discrete infrastructure renewal requirements exceed capital budget capacity. The seventh opportunity considers the creation of a program to tackle the backlog of outdated policies and ensure regular updates of policies, procedures, and directives. A significant portion of council policies and administrative procedures and directives require updates or development, such as financial planning and budgeting policies. Dependence on institutional memory due to staff turnover affects knowledge transfer, possibly due to resourcing capacity pressures like emergency management and vacancies. This opportunity could be enhanced by the development of a dashboard to display the status of existing policies and related procedures, and make all council-approved policies accessible in the Wood Buffalo external website. The eighth opportunity would investigate the capabilities and limitations of rural service delivery to define and communicate service levels distinct from urban areas, recognizing the necessity for varied service standards and effective public communication. Transparency about service levels and their associated costs, focusing on affordability and sustainability, will be key to the development of a sustainable rural service model going forward. Current ambiguity in rural service delivery expectations has prompted efforts to match them to urban standards, despite the cost, physical obstacles, and the lack of such a mandate in the 1995 amalgamation agreement. Staff have found it challenging to satisfy rural customer expectations due to the differing service target requirements in urban and rural settings. There has been a demand for urban-style services in rural hamlets, including waste collection, sewer systems, snow removal, and improved recreational facilities. However, it's uncertain whether the long-term cost implications of maintaining and operating these services were considered, especially given the low population density utilizing and supporting them. The process improvement opportunity would conduct a comprehensive review of current procedures to cultivate a compliance and customer-oriented culture, establish accountability, boost productivity, and ensure sustainable processes. The review would strive for outcomes like aligning resources and service levels, minimizing duplication, enhancing interdepartmental collaboration, and creating a customer-focused value proposition characterized by efficient, relevant interactions, and increased use of technology for routine tasks. Improved efficiency by unifying or centralizing similar functions across different municipal services could also be sought. Frequent procedural changes and limited institutional memory due to staff turnover result in incomplete implementation or enforcement of process. This could lead to safety hazards, harm to the municipality's reputation, inefficient service delivery, and reduced customer satisfaction if not addressed. Staff inefficiencies have been observed due to duplicated work, limited visibility, and disjointed data collection across similar functions, negatively affecting customer convenience. Wood Buffalo could consider consolidating services, outsourcing, or better leveraging existing nonprofits to deliver more efficient service. The records management opportunity proposes to standardize record management process and set service level expectations for records management. It would consider enhancing resources and governance for Wood Buffalo's privacy protection, focusing on centralization, especially for FOIP-related tasks. The opportunity speaks to improved staff training for record management policy compliance and exploration of tech solutions for efficient management of digital data, including archiving, retrieval, protection, and disposal. Improvements in this area could help address the current absence of enforced record retention schedules, help with Wood Buffalo's strained ability to produce timely records, and address observed inefficiencies in record management and access. The final opportunity developed would explore ways to unify and upgrade current tools and technologies to enhance service delivery, accountability, and service level understanding. It would consider boosting the use of existing technologies to prepare Wood Buffalo for new technologies such as remote sensing, AI, and machine learning. It should also investigate new tools to enhance data collection and functionality, including policy management, asset management, and workforce analysis. The lack of integration in current technology systems necessitates manual tracking, leading to potential errors, delays, and inefficiencies in service delivery, and limiting Wood Buffalo's ability to adjust resources. Department leaders have highlighted the limited functionality of available technology, reliance on manual processes, and lack of data for planning and monitoring, resulting in limited accountability and understanding of service performance. The developed high-level implementation plan, shown here, outlines the estimated timeline to complete each opportunity with potential sequencing. It assumes that Wood Buffalo will start by initiating worthy pursuits and quick wins simultaneously, followed by medium-term projects once the quick wins are substantially completed. Collectively, these opportunities will position your organization for the future, as they are foundational in the municipal space. Some have been attempted here in the past, and we understand there are some components of the proposed opportunities that are now underway. In any event, these opportunities, customized for Wood Buffalo, are designed to unlock the great potential of your organization in continuing to provide great service at a reasonable cost to the citizens and visitors of the Wood Buffalo region. This concludes our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate the presentation. Do you have any questions from council? Councillor Dogar?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for giving me a chance. There's a term used, sub-services. What is sub-services?
Maybe hand it over to Carol to give you some definitions around our program, services, and sub-services that basically frame the service profile. So Carol, please provide those definitions.
Certainly. So our service inventory that Lam walked us through. So we have 144 sub-services. Essentially, we use sub-services to further break down municipal services. We understand that a particular service would be led by a particular department and be serving a certain customer and have a certain output. But we know that there's different components of it. So for example, when we look at trail access or the ability to access open spaces, for example, we know that there are pathways, there are trails, there are sidewalks, there's different components of that ability to use outdoor or active transportation. And so by breaking the larger services into smaller sub-services, we were able to look at them more specifically in terms of who's leading that component. We know that it might be a partnership between different departments. And we also recognize that some parts of services are mandated. So for example, something like public engagement. So we know that there is mandated public engagement required under the MGA that has a service role component that makes it mandatory, that you need to do it for budget engagement. But there's other types of not for budget engagement, for land use planning. So things like having public hearing and requirements there, whereas there's other types of engagement that happen that aren't necessarily required under legislation. And so we're able to separate out those sub-services and to look at those differently and give them different scores. And that, to Ricky's point earlier, just gives you a framework for having conversations about potential changes or resource allocations for your services. Because if you're looking at it holistically, you might want to look at, okay, which of those services do we absolutely have to provide? And let's make sure we're doing those well at the service level that we want. And then let's start looking at maybe services that are nice to provide and we would like to provide them at a certain level, but it's kind of a prioritization exercise. So essentially, we work from programs are large, then we get into services, and then more specifically sub-services. So those are kind of that three-level hierarchy.
Thank you very much. Very elaborate reply. Would your recommendation have some bearing on the budget?
Yeah, it's a good question, Councillor. So as part of the 11 opportunities for improvement that have been defined in our report, the financial implications for each have been qualitatively addressed in our report. So they're not entirely quantified, but they are assessed as part of a financial impact to the organization. I'll also say to you that some of the opportunities for improvement require investment. They're not all about cost savings. They're about making the organization more efficient and effective. So the financial implications for each opportunity are certainly documented, and they're addressed as a criteria that we've assessed for each one, which have been fully documented in our report.
Thank you very much. Very nice reply. My other question is that have anybody have the experience of serving in the region?
I apologize, Councillor, I don't understand the question.
Have anybody of you, any one of you have served in this region, may not be in the regional municipality of Wood Buffalo, in the oil industry or in other services?
Oh, that's a good question. Our team here is focused on providing services to municipalities, but the background, I would say, maybe I'll turn over to Bradley and Scott for sharing their background. But maybe Scott, you could begin, and then Bradley.
Yeah, sure. So I was a municipal councillor for the city of Winnipeg. I chaired finance for 8 years, and then I was at the provincial legislature in Manitoba. So I was the minister of finance and a variety of other in charge of treasury board and other types of roles. And so, a pretty good understanding in the municipal context. And I think everyone, the rest of the team is based in Alberta and, right around the Edmonton area. But I'll let Brad kind of give his background and some of his experiences as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. My other question is, have you taken input from the community also? Second part, from the staff also, other than CEO. CEO, you have mentioned it. The councillors also. These three categories, have you interviewed them, taken input? Please apprise me of that.
It's a great question. And when we undertake these organizational reviews, we start with the perspective of engagement. So we actually undertook a complete staff-wide survey to form our scoping exercise. So all staff had an opportunity to voice an opinion. And we've in fact prepared a deliverable for our steering committee that summarized the results of that survey. And as Scott mentioned, over 75 hours of engagement directly with staff, primarily to complete the service profiles and identify opportunities for improvement. Councillor, what we did not do is we did not engage the public. And that's certainly an opportunity for the organization to take on as these opportunities for improvement, some of which do have public-facing implications. It will certainly be a next step for consideration.
Thank you for the reply. My next question is that you must have seen, and I have observed as a councillor, the services of our staff administration is more than good. How did you find it?
So, Councillor, if you're referring to the fact of whether or not services are good or bad, we've identified 11 opportunities for improvement. So what that means is that we certainly acknowledge that staff are hardworking, and the administration, along with your direction, are certainly allowing the organization to perform. And what we're suggesting to you is that with the 11 opportunities for improvement, there are opportunities to perform better. So it's not as if the organization needs to be broken down and dismantled, but it's as if there is an opportunity after this review to enhance it even further. Some are foundational, some are tweaks, but at the same token, through the change of the organization structure and other elements that we talked about today, they are opportunities for improvement, and those have been defined in today's presentation.
Thank you. My next question is, did you find the amount, the time you mentioned from April to November, did you find there's another important segment of the hierarchy, deputy CEO? There was no deputy CEO, for which there was frequent changes of the CEOs, and there's continuity of the command or chain. It suffered. Did you feel this omission?
Councillor, just to understand your question, are you saying with the change in leadership, did that impact our project?
No, sorry. So there was no deputy CAO for the last 1 year, the period in which you were carrying out your exercise. So it is an important link according to me, because there has been 4 CAO changes. And if the deputy CEO had been there, there must have been continuity of the exercise or the functioning. Still there is, but little bit suffering is it has to be there. Did you feel the importance, and would you put emphasis on this for future?
Maybe I'll answer that, and I'll turn over to Carol, who completed the organization exercise. So from this project's perspective, Councillor, you should be aware that it was governed by a steering committee that the CAO was one member of. So we had a continuity of ability to liaise with members of a steering committee. It wasn't just one person. So that was beneficial for this project's exercise. And the mayor was kindly a member of that steering committee as well. So that was beneficial. With respect to the organizational design, we acknowledged that there was no deputy CAO, as Carol mentioned, and took that into consideration, which, as Carol mentioned, there was several reports direct to the CAO as a result of that. But maybe I'll let Carol just elaborate on the deputy CAO position.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the question. So one of the things that we considered in our analysis was looking at other organizational structures in those 6 comparator municipalities. And I can say that the use of a deputy CAO position was not in any of those comparators. What we did see, there were some variation of kind of a secondary level between the CAO and maybe a director level. They have different names, general manager or executive director, where you might see kind of a operational focus, maybe more of a corporate services, and then maybe kind of an external or communications role. And then you see the kind of that next layer. And what we understood and why we didn't necessarily propose having that middle layer between the senior leadership team and the CAO was just given the culture of the organization, the wanting to have direct access to the CAO and being able to work collaboratively and not introducing another layer of bureaucracy here. So that's where we didn't go down the road of having a deputy CAO, nor did we introduce a secondary senior leadership layer. And so it was primarily based on what we heard from staff, what we understood of the culture, and also what we saw in the benchmarking.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Councillor McGrath?
Thank you, through the chair. In your team today, Scott, would there be somebody present from your team today from our last review?
No, we weren't involved in. Are you talking about the last review? And I think it was 2019.
Yes, we had about 88 points, and some of them are still the same today. And I'm wondering, we were going to be turning back. I think it was 8 important points that are still in this report that haven't been addressed. And I think it's fair to say your steering committee and your external 380, 360. There's a couple of questions here, I guess, Scott. First question is, I don't see the 8 points being carried over to your report that were done by your company and committed to council. I don't see that. I see it in different words, but I know when there's a commitment made, well, you get through elections, council changes, administration changes, but the people's needs just get greater.
Yeah, I guess maybe just address that. We weren't involved in the previous, kind of reviews, and no one in the team here was. I think what's important is the roadmap that we put forward. So there's a number of 11 different, important recommendations. Some are kind of, will have financial implications. Some will have customer service for your residents, implications for it. So what's important is the follow through. I think to your point, right, you can have a great report that sits on a shelf and does nothing, but an organization doesn't move ahead. So I think if you're going to look at one of the slides, looking at the implementation timeline, right, and making sure, things do move ahead with it. And so whether that's done internally or you have an external, group like KPMG or another organization helps you with the implementation of that, that's key to it, right? Again, you can have a great report with a whole bunch of recommendations. If they don't go anywhere, then that's not good for the organization. So it's really important to have that timelines. And the last slide that Brad went through suggested these are the timelines you can do it in, kind of the time frames, and where there's some easy wins right off the bat, and then it goes through immediate and longer term ones. So that's really important. It's critical. Now that you have the report, council has it, can make some decisions on these types of things to make sure implementation happens. And I believe the administration said in the other session that there'll be kind of regular reports back through council. But that's really up to administration and you as council to make those decisions.
I go back though, just to make sure that your organization done the last report. And is that correct? Like your mother, your flagship, your brand, done our last report?
No, to answer your question, Councillor, it was another organization that did it. KPMG did provide consulting services, is my understanding, to the municipality, but it was another organization that performed the organizational review, which is, of course, a snapshot in time. So, yeah, the scope of this exercise wasn't implementation review of the previous organizational review. The scope of this exercise was to complete an organizational review as per a council direction.
And some of that consulting from that we were committed to before would bought over those 8 points. And I see just a question. I guess I would look at you number stuff to significance, to up the efficiencies and the duplication in any organization like the Hitachi Group or whatever. And then one of your first few bullets, it's the time it's taken to answer council's questions. I would say I'd question the time it takes is because there seems to me on the same project, they create their own questions. When something's going to work on Monday, you spend 20 million on, and it doesn't work. Well, it gives rise to questions. I think that, I guess as a guy that spent, I don't know, the last 29 years serving office, I don't ask any, questions like you used to, because it comes with education and what gets you mirrors and what, like the fruit of labor. And that's it kind of begs to differ in your same report, the amalgamation. Well, that was done in 1995. And we're living up to our amalgamation and beyond, because most people you deal with have 4 pillars of local governments. We have taken on 28 pillars. And in your report, your operational report, there's no synergies aligned with our biggest gift, and that's the industry players. So I'll say this: the questions get easier when we find out we're putting over 400,000 barrels of oil a day more. We had shrunk our budget by our spend, our taxable income from 1.3 billion in 13.
Councillor McGrath, do you have a question there?
So I do have a question.
Okay.
So the question is, in your report, looking ahead, as you said, there's no adjustment to our realities of the money we're going to have and how much extra we're going to put on top of it. It's not shadowed in your operational thing. And I don't know if it's industry you talk to is going to be a gift. Like going back to Mayor Bowman, the questions are going to get tougher for the guys that sit in these seats. And because people are privy to this report before me today, maybe they have a better understanding for it. But if we don't get to the bone, we're going to be swallowed by the meat. And the fact is that our greatest stakeholder in your report is not mentioned, because that's where amalgamation was supposed to help us. And those rural communities, we can't ignore, but we're not going to be able to fund it. So I would expect that the questions in your report would say, we have a fallout program. We have a big miss. And it goes right back to the organization. It goes back to having we built, like, for example, we've taken some of your steps. But I think that in the report, it should be recognized that council, that's every councillor in the city asks too many questions, any city. I would need, to me, the question is, how can we don't have the industries, we depend on the industry. But when you're shrinking 25 million a year, the question is, I guess, through the chair, how do we address that, and what's your plan? Because it's not in any of your steps. We can run an efficient operation, but if you're only getting 500 million and your costs are going to be projected out to be 800 million in 2028, my kids, they might be gone, but the other kids might want to have a chance to live with her. So forgive me if I asked a question, but I want to make sure that people understand that some of the guys that sat here in through these reports, and I don't get excited. I just think that it's my job to say we're going to be living off a $453 million budget in 2 years, and our operating budget is going to be about $650 million. It's not addressed. But we talk to stakeholders, administration, and like I say, some people seen the report. So I make no regrets for asking questions.
Okay,
Did you have a question?
yeah, we can
Councillor McGrath?
maybe reply to that, and maybe Scott. If you
Okay.
have a comment.
Go ahead, Ricky.
The question is, I'll try to make myself more clear. The question is, in your report, in your operation report, how come industry, there's not synergies or not a shortfallings on to where we got to get? That's the question. Because you just done an operation review. It's not just about our structure internally. There's not even a person moving place to address that shortcoming we're going to have.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McGrath. Ricky?
Yeah, thank you. And I have an answer, but maybe I'll turn over to Scott first, and then I can give you how the report can be used for your question, Councillor.
Yeah, I mean, I would say there's factors, I mean, I was a city councillor and elected official. I mean, there's things that you control and things that you don't, right? And so what administration, and I know this originated from council, is to make a lean organization that's effective, that can provide good customer service for the citizens. So that really incorporate these things. There's certain things on the price of oil and how much, production, that's sometimes that's out of council's, parameters of what they can do. So I think as an organization, you want to be as efficient and effective, and also you want to make sure that there's opportunities for improvement, whether that be life safety types of things on engineering, whether that be opportunities to be, more efficient and effective, or things in terms of the governance structure, right? So you can get the answers back to your constituents quicker or more effective. And so really that's what I think was asked in the scope of the work that we entailed. And again, there's going to be highs and lows with different organizations, with revenues that kind of come in and don't come in. Can't control that, but you can control the way the organization is managed. So I guess that's the way I would answer it. And most of this stuff is factual, and so as a council member, you can choose to make these decisions on certain items, and certain items you don't have to, right? But as an organization, that's really up to you as the board of governors, right, of the organization. So,
and just to add on to that, Councillor McGrath, I do have to. I'll just say I have to apologize, and because I have to correct myself. KPMG did complete an accountability study in 2014. It just was not this team, so that was 10 years ago. This organizational review, again, a point in time, so I just want to make that correction for you. It was KPMG as the firm who did it, not members of this team, of course, 10 years ago on that study. So those are the points that you're referring to. That was the same firm who conducted the study, so I'd like to correct myself there for you.
And certainly, I don't bring up this stuff to gain attention. The only thing I bring up this stuff for so our kids have a future, and the rural communities are not forgotten. And I guess half of my frustration is that time spent is time out of our personal lives that somebody took. So as we go, I would expect an operational review would encompass our operating costs. And some of those costs are burdened by people that don't live here. And I don't want to open up a box, but it's operational costs that we're observing today that we're not going to be able to sustain. So there's validation in experience sitting around listening to reports. When the rubber hits the road, it's just another report until we identify what we need to do to get here.
Yeah, I agree, Councillor McGrath. And I think when we get to later on, we can definitely go through that for council administration to take that forward.
Sorry about that. Ricky, I never brought it up because I know what they promised us. And one of the things that hurts in life is what people promise you and what end up happening. Sometimes it could make you feel like you're underserved and they're good people. Thanks, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor McGrath. Councillor Stroud?
Thank you, Mayor Bowman. Thank you for the presentation. Within the report regarding organizational governance, what are KPMG's opportunities to refocus the relationship between mayor and council and administration to a satisfactory level, supporting good governance and operational efficiency? I believe you mentioned the opportunity to develop a terms of reference. Can you please elaborate? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the question through the chair. This was certainly a very important opportunity for improvement. And if you'd allow me, I'll pass it over perhaps to Bradley to talk about this one. And perhaps Carol, if you have any additional comments, just to talk about the terms of reference, because that was quite detailed for the implementation step tailored for your organization.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McGrath, and through the chair. Terms of reference, it's, I think the idea you typically see with this is it's just sort of a bit of a framework that sort of helps to articulate and disseminate sort of expectations for a council administration relationship. So sometimes as administration, sitting in front of the table of councillors, it can certainly be intimidating, and certainly for I would say members of administration who are new to the organization or coming up, through the organization, they may not quite know exactly what to expect or how to behave. And likewise with new councillors coming in. It's sort of seasoned veteran councillors. Certainly, they probably understand decorum, understand sort of behaviors, understand the sort of perhaps unsaid things that sort of everyone sort of understands over time. A term of reference to sort of help, I'd say, dispel myths, perhaps, and things that have remained unsaid, but maybe should be said, in terms of just because some things get assumed, type thing. So I think also too. They typically they can help I'd say build better relationships as well. So you're setting expectations in terms of behavior, but also you're setting expectations in terms of trust and mutual respect, type thing between two sides. So it's not always us and them all the time with these things. It's a collaborative relationship between like public servants in the end who have certain roles in the paradigm, and just to sort of help and guide that a development of relationship and the execution of sort of what comes out of that collaboration, if that makes sense.
Thank you. I'm Councillor Stroud. But anyway, in your report, you did say...
Sorry, Councillor.
It's okay. Prioritizing training for council and staff can reinforce the value of what looks like good governance on paper into practice. I think that's a very important point that you put in your report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stroud. Councillor Ball.
Thank you, through the chair. I guess I got it would be a three-part question. Can it be assumed that, one of the things that I thought you guys were going to be investigating was basically our service levels and our services and their levels. So can it be assumed that our services and the levels of those services would dictate the resources that we have or what are required to provide those services for our community?
Thank you for the question, Councillor, through the chair. Short answer is yes. What you provide in the service levels, in terms of the services and the service levels as we've defined them in terms of the scope of the service, in other words, what's provided and the capacity of the service, how often the service is provided, for example, would have a large dictating effect on your operating budget and the financials. So to answer your question, absolutely, both from an internal service perspective and an external service perspective.
Right, and I obviously assume that, but with that said, through your review of our services and those service levels, would you have determined that we either have adequate, excess, or not enough resources to deliver those services?
Yeah, that's a good question, Councillor. And through the chair, and I'll answer this, and I'll also let you know that as part of our exercise, we have allocated your full-time equivalent staff members to each and every service. So we've identified where you have vacancies. We've identified where there's a number of services where employees are low, maybe because they're delivered by external parties, but that exercise was completed. And that tool was shared with administration to provide a snapshot of where FTE allocation, in your words, resources are allocated. Now, whether or not that's appropriate is a decision for administration and council to work with to determine whether or not there is a cognizant effort made to deliver an above average service level. What we've done is we've given you a framework and a snapshot of the current state. And now these tools and the methodology can certainly be used as part of the organizational decision-making to determine whether or not that future state should continue to be the way it is. So we've given you that information and the ammunition, but in order to make those decisions, that is certainly up to council and administration to continue those conversations for the future state. I'll just pause there. I think, Scott, you may have some additional context as well that you may wanted to share there.
Yeah, I think you covered it off, Ricky. Like, say there's a roadmap, as Ricky said, of the services that are higher, lower, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's not appropriate, right? It's up to council to make the decisions. There may be some historical reasons from the rural and urban context why service levels are higher or lower, or what have you. But it gives you a roadmap. So, where I kind of see this working in is, through your next budgeting process, you make decisions on, where the monies are allocated, and depending on how much revenue is coming in, right, then you make decisions whether you enhance certain areas. You got a roadmap of where you need to enhance, and if there's some areas that are, that are over service, you may make some decisions the other way to, utilize money in different ways. So it gives you a really good opportunity, especially during the budget process, to, bird's eye view of how other organizations are delivering it, and what you can improve or what you need to, consider going back at a different level. That's a decision that council can make.
Okay, well, thank you. And I can appreciate that. So when you did you referred to some other communities that you compared us to, like benchmarking, whatever you want to call it. When you did the review of our basic services and, of course, our service levels, I'm curious, how do we compare to other communities? Do we deliver more? Do we deliver less? Do we deliver the same?
It's a good question, Councillor, through the chair. You're going to determine that answer quite easily by looking at your level of service that's currently been documented within our report. So where you have an above average or a premium level of service, we define that as providing an above average level of service compared to the average level of service provided by other similar municipalities. So that's how it's informed, or usually through internal consultation, but that's the lens that we look at. So that's there. We had a snapshot on our presentation that gave you a point of view of where it might be above or below average. But that's certainly documented in our report. And there are areas where, while largely it's within the average, there's areas where you are above as a municipality and areas where you're below. And that's certainly there for you to have a look at.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank
The only thing I would
Paul.
add to...
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Scott.
No, I was going to say, the only thing I would add to what Ricky said, about 75% seem to be about in the range. There's about 15% that are above, 8% that are low that are listed out there, and about 80% are delivered in-house, I guess I'll call them. So if you're looking for, alternative service deliveries, there's opportunities there. There's opportunities to do things with nonprofits, or there's opportunities to consolidate some services if you're looking to reduce costing for it. But again, you can look at it the other way. Maybe you want enhanced services. So it just gives you an opportunity to make those types of decisions.
Okay, so I guess I do have one more bit to add. I never did, and I don't think I once said I want to reduce. I don't think I once said I want to enhance. I wanted to understand where we fit versus other communities, and I can appreciate that in some areas we're low, some areas we're high, some areas we're about the same. But there's got to be a gut feel how we are across the board. And I'm assuming I can't get that answer, but to Councillor McGrath's point, I don't know that our services have changed a whole lot in the last, we'll call it 10 years. but I certainly know our revenue has. And if our revenue keeps going down and our services keep staying the same or going up, there's going to be a crash point. And I don't know that that was identified in this report. So how do we address that when we get there? Because we're going to get there. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of time. It's not how, it's when.
Assuming that's a question, Councillor, we can share a perspective if you like. And that's really the investment that's made in this study is the creation of current state service profiles. Those service profiles include service levels, includes a description of the service. It actually includes whether or not the municipality is mandated to provide the service in the first place. The intent of this work, when we do it with other municipalities, and now that we've done it for you, is to use it as that decision-making tool, to acknowledge the fact that you can actually use this to say, should we even be delivering this level of service? Or perhaps we need to increase our level of service. But these are the trade-offs that all municipalities need to make within the budgetary pressures that they face. So that's just one word of encouragement to say that the investments made, it is a different way of looking at municipal organization. It breaks down silos, and that's the purpose of service profiles, to give you the objective information in order to make these difficult decisions as council and then enact it through administration. So it's not an easy exercise and there's no silver bullet, but it gives you a methodology to help make those decisions.
Okay, and I certainly understand that. I guess what I was looking for was what maybe your recommendation might be based on what the level currently is, and perhaps our consultant could say, you know, we recommend you go to this level versus that level, and maybe in some cases we increase it, but I just don't see that, but that's okay. Thank you.
Thank Councillor Ball. Councillor Grandison.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you through the chair for the presentation. I guess almost like a summary of all of the questions and everything. You make many references to a snapshot in time, which I can appreciate, because anytime you do a review of an organization, it's a snapshot of that moment in time where we're at, right? And from my perspective, if nothing else, what this report ought to provide is a roadmap and an opportunity for our administration, our CEO, our administration and council to look at our organization at this moment in time and make some decisions about moving forward. All of the questions that I've heard, we're always driven by budget. At the end of the day, we can be as idealistic as we want. We're driven by budget. If we don't have the money, we can't do it, period. And as Councillor Ball just indicated, and some of the other questions, money's changing. And how we delivered services in the past, some of the infrastructure we built, we now have to pay for. And we're undertaking that exercise at this moment in time, which I'm sure you folks saw while you were doing your review. You know, we're currently trying to understand what our asset managements are going to look like in the future. So I guess for me, and here's the question. To me, this is just a picture in time with some recommendations for us, for administration and council to go forward and look how we can streamline and manage our organization better, period. Correct?
That is correct, Councillor.
There you go. End of question. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grandison. Do you have any questions from council? Do we have any other delegates for this item?
We have no registered delegates, Mr. Mayor.
Can I have someone make the motion? Councillor Benjoko.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that KPMG organizational review dated February 27th be accepted as information.
Thank you. And thank Councillor Weigel for seconding that. Call for a vote. Or sorry, do we have any debate or discussion or comments from council added to what we already have? Councillor Stroud.
Thank you, Mayor Bowman. So in reviewing the service inventory, I agree that animal services bylaw and RCMP enforcement incident response need improvement in the rural, as I get concerns from residents. It would also be great to see bylaw out at the rural engagements and in the schools collaborating on enforcement prevention and what needs to be done to be compliant. In your service inventory, I also see that business continuity planning and implementation in emergency management and business and economic development are below average throughout the region. Also, as you state, bylaw development is below average. So where I struggle is that administration lumps rural and urban together on this, not taking into consideration land size and lack of opportunity for services such as home businesses for minor vehicle repair. And I also, in the KPMG organizational review, I noticed 2 items such as organizational governance and people and culture where similar improvements needed in the Grant Thornton organizational review from 2016. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stroud. Councillor Dogar?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for giving me opportunity. The motion says that dated February 2024 be accepted as information. So this accepted word is alarming for me, that we are just informed or we are approving it. Information, probably it is okay, but the execution of this exercise has started about 2 months back. So I want the answer from this, for this. Is it information or an approval?
This is accepting the information of the KPMG report dated February 2024.
So this has already started executing it. So then I should believe that this council is not the supreme authority over the functioning of the council or the administration, what all is happening here.
I'm not sure you're asking, so we're just accepting this as this report as information.
My idea has been conveyed to my colleagues. I think we are just here to raise hands, yes, no, and this has been put on us for yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Benjoko.
Thank you, Mayor Bowman. Thank you again for the presentation, KPMG team. My comment or question is to CAO. The fear is of reports like this is normally that they are just put away and might not be used. I don't know the level of involvement of the CAO, and I just hope that this won't be another exercise in futility that wouldn't be applicable to the plans for the region, or I'm just wondering if this aligns with the plans. And in saying that, I noticed that there has been some changes already, and looks like some of them are in line with KPMG report.
CEO.
So through the chair to Councillor Benjoko. I see benefit from the report. I did work quite closely with Scott and Ricky when they were producing the structure that we have in place now for the senior leadership team, and that worked quite well. As far as the rest of the report goes, we have a service catalogue which identifies what we have at this point in time, and we can use that going forward, and that will be a reference document for that and future improvements.
Okay. Thank you, CEO. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Benjoko. Do we have any other questions, debate points, or comments of council? I'm not seeing any. Call for a vote.
In favor.
Thank you, Councillor Grandison. And that's carried 9-1. Thank you. Thank you. I want to thank KPMG for the work they've done over the last year. I've been involved with the group off and on, and agree with some of the comments our councillors have made. We as a council need to look towards our stakeholders as we move forward and be vigilant with the taxpayers' dollars as we look at this and what service we can provide, while trying to look towards administration to find efficiencies so we can provide those same services to the rural. So thank you again for all your work you guys have done over the last year. Hope we don't see you too soon. Thank you. And right now we're going to take a 10-minute recess, everyone. We'll see you back in 10 minutes. Welcome back, everyone. Moving on with the meeting, we have item number 5.1, Councillor's motion. I'll ask Councillor Ball to read out his motion, please.
Thank you. I move that administration review and bring forward options for the lands acquired as part of the Draper voluntary buyout for council's consideration. Options to include selling the properties as is through a real estate listing.
Can I have someone second that motion?
Oh, my things just keep shutting off.
And Councillor Walker had seconded that. Do you want to speak to your motion, Councillor Ball?
Yes, thank you. Obviously, we've purchased a number of properties. I don't know exactly how many took the buyout off the top of my head, but I know we had a number of discussions about the various forms of the properties once they were acquired by the municipality. I recall something about potential demolition. I recall restoration. I recall turning them into park space. But I don't think there was an actual decision on what we were going to do with the properties. I know, well, I don't know, but I feel that if we don't do anything with them, my assumption is that they'll just deteriorate and potentially cause us some grief, where I would assume, you know, someone might move into them. And, you know, I assume right now we're maintaining those to some degree. It was minus 30, so I hope someone's checking to see that the heat's on and so on. I just wanted to bring this motion forward so that we could look at potential alternatives of what to do with the properties. I'm sure that they're all in various states of repair or disrepair, but we don't have that information in front of us to determine what exactly we could do with each and every property.
Thank you, Councillor Ball. Do we have any delegates to this item?
We have no registered delegates for this item, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, do we have any questions of council? Councillor Benjoko?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Ball, for bringing the motion forward. My question and concern is that of safety and liability. So in terms of selling off the properties through real estate, so would that be for the properties to be moved from Draper, or for them to be bought and another set of humans occupy the space?
I think it could be any of the above. I think this is being kind of interpreted a little bit incorrectly. It's not about solely about selling the properties to someone else to potentially live in it. What I'd like to see is that administration comes back to us with a report that frankly suggests the best option for each of the properties. One might be, you know, selling it and someone living in it. One might be someone buying the home and relocating it to a property somewhere else. One might be this place is completely in disarray and needs to be demolished. But we haven't set anything up. I mean, maybe I can ask our CAO, like, what are we doing today? Are we maintaining them? Are we looking after them? Is there somebody keeping an eye on them? We've got a significant investment in these properties, and I don't know what we're doing with them.
Through the chair to Councillor Ball. We purchased 9 homes, and we took possession of the last one there on the 15th of December 2023. And for the protection of the municipal assets that we've purchased, exterior inspections are occurring every 48 hours, interior inspections twice a month, and all of the units have been winterized. So we've removed the water and added glycol to toilets and things like that, so to protect them.
Okay, so we've invested some time, obviously, in the properties.
And just to carry on from that, you know, is the administration has retained a consultant to look at each of the properties and develop options for possibly moving them, demolition, and those types of things. Listing them for sale was not one of those options that was being looked at.
Okay.
But we were looking at how we could either demolish them, salvage and demolish, or else possibly move them somewhere else.
When do you think we can expect that a report would come back to us with what that outcome might be for each of those properties?
I could ask Kelly if Kelly could respond to that. I think we're very, very close.
Chime in.
Through the chair to Councillor Ball, we are currently reviewing the draft report from the consultant. So we're conducting an internal review. I would anticipate we'd be back in front of council in April to present the information. Depending if there's an additional motion that's added, we may need to consider some additional time. But right now we're on track to be back in front of council in April.
Okay, thank you.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Bajoko?
No, 100%. I think he moved on. So to the answer that Councillor Ball gave, the aspect of the motion to that maybe it's possible to sell to a new set of occupants, I do not support that, because if we are buying people out of there because of the flooding possibility, then I do not see how that could be one of the options. So I would strongly not support that.
Yeah, we'll get into debate points in a few minutes, Councillor. We'll just questions right now of administration and Ken. But thank you.
Thank you. So I'll get that ready. Thank you, Mayor
Bowman. So you don't have
Councillor Boussier?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mayor Bowman, through the chair. I certainly support Councillor Ball's motion here, including maybe the option, if there is the option of selling, I guess. So my question would be to legal, if there's anything in the voluntary buyout that would prevent us from putting these houses back on the market, or some, or all, or one.
Through the chair to Councillor Boussier, no, there's no restriction, prohibition, or anything contained in the purchase and sale agreement based on what Director Hansen advised. Options for the various homes will be part of the report that comes back to council.
Okay, thank you. And I guess just for clarity, I believe not all, there were at least one or two houses that did not take on any water during the flood of 2020. Is that correct?
Through to the chair to Councillor Boussier, I'd have to confirm that and report back.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Boussier. Do we have any other questions? Or sorry, Councillor Dogar, your question?
Yes, thank you very much. Just thank you very much, Councillor Ball, for bringing this point. We are the representatives of the public and residents. We must look after their interest, and what all is in the interest of the community and those residents, we should try to do as soon as possible. Thank you.
Do you have any questions for Councillor Ball or administration?
I still have a comment. I have one.
Yeah, your mic's on.
I know. But,
Go ahead.
There's a whole bunch of, I don't know how to phrase this, but there's
variables.
There's so many variables in this, and you know, like we bought the homes out, and administration can correct me if I'm wrong, at 250.9. So any home that was 250.9 or less qualified for the buyout. And as we understand, or as we know, 250.9 is an engineered solution for flood control or mitigation. That's not a flood elevation. That's a 1 in 200 year flood. The province only mandates 1 in 100 that we protect to that, which is it 250.4 or something in that neighborhood. But a 1 in 200 year flood is actually 250.4. So the engineered solution to stop a house from flooding is an additional half a meter. So there's potential that we bought homes out that were within the 1 in 200 to a theoretical, I think it's 1 in 350 year flood elevation. That's 250.4 to 250.9. So there are some homes that we bought out that are significantly higher in elevation, potentially. I don't know what all the different floor levels are of each home, but that are significantly higher than what a 1 in 100 year flood would have been. So I'd like to understand where we bought out some homes, where they lie in that grid, and potentially there are some that could be sold if, you know, a potential person wanted to purchase it, knowing that there's risk at 1 in 200 year versus 1 in 100 year, which is what the province mandates us to protect at. The sale of that home could potentially pay for the demolition and restoration of some of the other lands that we couldn't sell. So I'd like to see options. I'm not saying that we go ahead and do that, but what are the options for each individual property?
Do you have any other questions from council?
Well, does the administration know how many homes are below or between 250 or 250.4 and 250.9?
Through the chair to Councillor Ball, I've captured the note that you're looking for the options and how they're associated with their elevation. We could certainly include that in our presentation that's coming back, so that if council were to pass this motion tonight, we'd be able to depict that information in our presentation back, no problem.
So in the presentation back, Kelly, is it possible to get it broken down individual to each property? So we're not like kind of looking at X number of properties this, X number of properties that, like just individual properties like property 1. This is the dimensions, this is the flood level, this is where it's at, this is the property level, and then property number 2 going through those same things?
Through the chair to the mayor, absolutely. At this point, they're municipal assets. We have an opportunity to share additional detail that wasn't necessarily available when we were going through the conversations and in advance of us purchasing them. So we'd certainly be able to break it out by property, by option. And then what I've captured here is the elevation of, we could do it for the various floors. We'd have to confirm if there's additional survey that needs to take place. But with the data that we have right now, I feel confident that we could confirm the elevation.
Perfect, thank you. Do you have any other questions for administration or Councillor Ball? Councillor McGrath.
Thank you, through the chair. I guess more of a question for the procedures in this motion. The people that have been bought out, I assume we can free because whoever decided to stay are staying, and whoever getting bought out got bought out. But should this motion pass, would they be the first people to explore the opportunities? Are they, the contracts, we don't see them as councillors, but would they, I guess through administration, would they be able to participate in the next phase of this, should it go? Would they be excluded? Like if I had a property that was bought out because of the circumstances, whether it be floods or slippage on the hill, would that exclude me from, 2 months from now being able to, I guess, go to market and make a bid for the home?
We'll have legal answer that, Councillor McGrath.
Yeah.
Through the chair to Councillor McGrath, no, there's nothing to prohibit or prevent anyone who had sold their property from participating in any sale should council elect to proceed in that manner. Perhaps because of Councillor McGrath's long experience, he might be thinking about expropriation situations where there actually is an obligation by a municipality to make expropriated property available to the party if it's not used within 2 years. But in this case, there's no conditions or restrictions.
Thank you, through the chair. I know in Father Mercury there's still 2 beautiful lots, but back through the chair to legal. In this set of movements, would it be similar to what was done in Potomac Park, where the mobile homes were gifted to the rural communities? Would would your final contract with these people, would it see a destination already for the units that were bought that would jeopardize or compromise what's being proposed in the motion?
Through the chair, as to Councillor McGrath, as Director Hansen explained, there will be a report coming back that will explore all the options. And it may well be that there are some repurposing opportunities for some of the homes, but that'll all be fully explored in the report.
So, to the chair, the sitting agreement right now to close of sale, the municipality just takes the assets, so there's no legacy, there's no deal with the owner or the municipality that when the home is bought, by X amount of time it has to be moved or demolition, or it's just wide open?
Through the chair to Councillor McGrath, to use your expression, it is wide open in the sense that there were no restrictions. The municipality, I think, was very reasonable for any request by the sellers for special items in some of the buildings. So once they sold the properties, the deals were clean and concluded with there's nothing left hanging with any of the owners. So it's fully open to council following a report to make decisions about the use and disposition of all these lands.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate your knowledge.
Thank you, Councillor McGrath. Are there any other questions of council, of administration, or Councillor Ball? I'm not seeing any. I have just a quick question for administration. During this, when we did our options back, looking for, of course, it's going to be, like Councillor Ball had indicated, a lot of variables in there. Will we also have an assessed value of the property as well? So we think we had assessments done prior to the motion to purchase them. Would there be an up-to-date assessment on the properties, on those properties? Guess I've turned your mic on.
Through the chair to the mayor, if you'd like an up-to-date assessment completed, I believe I'd need a moment to speak to my colleagues, but we'd likely need to put that out to market again. That was the method of which we obtained those previously. And so it is, I would presume that we have that contractor available that could assist us with pulling
I was
those.
just asking if it was a part of your report. I wasn't asking for it to be done, just asking as part of it.
It's not currently part of the report.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Boussier?
Yeah, just to look, Mayor, from some clarity, when you say assessment, you mean appraisals?
Yeah.
Okay. Because appraisals were done.
Right, and that's why I asked if there was going to be a new appraisal done. I meant appraisal, you're correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Are there any other questions, debate points, or comments? Councillor Stroud?
In the motion in reference to the option to include selling the properties as is through a real estate listing, I've received emails from residents who live in Draper with concerns that the owners of property who took a buyout can potentially buy their home back at a discounted price and profit from this program. Other residents are saying this motion does not make sense because the main idea was to take residents out of harm's way of flooding, so why put other residents in this situation? I think we need to communicate with the Draper residents of the ongoing process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stroud. Councillor Banjoko?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Stroud. So I'm just going to repeat myself that we bought people out of those properties for whatever they value. I do not support that we allow residents to occupy on the same land, the same places. But of course, it will make sense if they are buying to move the properties out of Draper. And if we allow that, I believe we are now acquiring another set of liabilities should there be flood in the future. So that option, I don't think is, or I do not support that that should be one of the the options to be considered.
Thank you, Councilor Majogo.
Yes.
Councilor Weigel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through the chair. I appreciate the motion to get Draper moving. I really do. We've been trying to get it going forward. But talking to the residents, I do have a hard time with the selling the properties of the real estate, in the fact that it doesn't also become equitable. The people that did not take the buyout didn't have the option to then sell their property and then have an opportunity to rebuy it back. And so that option becomes off the table for the other people that came off. I also didn't think it's fair for the taxpayers' money to also sell out and then give them the option to sell it back. And so as the motion stands, I can't go with it. I don't know if a friendly amendment to take options to include selling the purchase, as though a real estate listing is an option to take off. But I'd be willing to support it that way, as the administration would come back with the best option, no matter what it is for each property.
Yeah, I'm just looking for options of what we can do with these properties, you know, and it could be one, like, how do you sell a house? There's a bunch of structures out there that were never touched with water, didn't get a drop on them. Like, is it conceivable that we could pick that house up and move it a meter up the hill? Like, literally on the same property. Is it conceivable? You could potentially do that. We don't know. We haven't gotten a report, right? And I wouldn't want to take anything off the table, because there's no harm in having options for us to choose. We're not saying that that's the only option. That's a potential option. And hence the reason we would have a report for each and every property, not as a global. The idea of I've received emails too. One fellow wants to buy his house back as long as it's at a reduced deal. I laugh. I'm not going to lie. I laughed. It's a joke. I understand that. Like, you want to sell it to us for X and pay 1/3 X? That doesn't make sense. They have a value, whatever that value is. I don't know. I'm not a real estate agent, but I feel we should have all of the options in front of us and choose one. We need to move on from this Draper Road. Right now, we have a bunch of houses that if we don't make a decision, we're just going to sit there. And Henry and his team are going to be responsible to making sure the water's turned off, making sure no one's living in there, no bugs are in there, no goats are in there, or whatever. So it is what it is. So we need to do something with the properties. And I think we should have every option available to us at the time we make the decision. We're not making a decision tonight.
No, and I feel that's fair, and I 100% agree. Moving the house off the property should be a viable option. My comment was basically just selling it as is, still there. So, yeah, thank you.
Councillor Grandison.
Let him defeat it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, this is a tough one for me because I didn't support this in the first place. However, having said that, we're here where we are right now. I do support the motion, not because I think we should resell property that we, for all intents and purposes, we call it a volunteer buyout, but whatever. You know, I don't think we should put that market necessarily, or that home back on the market. However, having said that, what do I know? I am a realtor, or I was a realtor, but I do believe that at the end of the day, Councillor Ball's motion is to look at all of the options, not just one of them, all of them on each individual property. There's no motion here, and I received the same emails that everybody else received. There's no motion here to actually sell them. There's no motion to sell them back to the other people. It's to look at all of the options, whatever they may be. And to me, that's the motion that's on the floor. And because of that, I will support it. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Grandison. Councillor Stroud.
Thank you. Does administration have a plan to bring forward to council on their recommendations for the homes in Draper?
Through the chair to Councillor Stroud, we are currently in the process of putting forward a report that would provide options to council. Very specifically, the options that we're looking at is what the total cost of demolition would look like for properties, what an option would look like for salvage and then demolition, and what the viability or the options are related to relocating the homes off of the current properties in Draper. I've heard a couple of other items articulated this evening, and some of those may require additional time if those other options are ones that council would like us to explore.
Thank you, Kelly. Councillor Stroud? Okay, thank you. Just listen to the comments and debate points going around the room. I think, Councillor Ball, I think some of the councillors, the issue is the as-is through real estate issue is the part that people have an issue with. Like when we talk about different options, I think it's the as-is is the...
Take that out. We remove as-is. Yeah.
That was Councillor Weigel's. So, Councillor Weigel?
Yeah, I would like to again announce a friendly amendment to take the as-is portion out of the motion.
Councillor Ball?
That's fine.
And that's fine. Councillor Benjoko?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What is the implication of selling as is?
As is, I think, I can't speak for everyone in council, but for me, it's the way the property is right now, how it sits, whether it be on a flood zone, whether it need different work to make it protected from flood waters, that sort of thing. Like Councillor Ball had mentioned, some of the options, maybe moving it a bit up a hill, maybe raising that property, that sort of thing. Maybe selling a few would pay for those to be done on a few other ones, just to look at each individual property individually and bring those different up, looking at all the variables of each property.
Okay, so as is means on the land.
The way it sits right now. The way it sits right now.
Current condition.
Okay, which is what I would not support as well. So that takes care of my question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Boussier?
I think to the chair, Mayor, maybe you have clarified. So just removing as is. So the new motion for Councillor Ball will be you can't purchase the property and live on the current property. Is that what is that the new motion then?
Just would be, I'll read it out just so everybody can get it. This is Councillor Ball's motion. I move the administration review and bring forward options for land acquired as part of the Draper voluntary buyout for council's consideration. Options to include selling the properties through real estate listing.
Okay. So that motion reads, the way I read it then, if I want to purchase a house down there, I can move into it.
It possibly, see what the options come back from administration and the House. Like Councillor Ball mentioned, so if we can get a divisive look at each property and what's there and what needs to be done, and look at each individual property, we can go from there.
Okay, thank you.
And maybe I'll add a slight little scenario. I don't know if this exists out there, but it potentially could, where you've got a property that goes up like this and the house is down at the bottom. There's no reason why we couldn't sell that property if we knocked that house down and the guy wanted to build the house up here, if that's above 250.9, right?
Agreed.
So I don't know what that's worth, but I'm sure.
Yeah, we'll hopefully we'll get options back from administration. Right. Councillor Weigel?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I would like clarity on what my colleague just said, Councillor Boussier. The way he read it was the fact that somebody could purchase the property and move into the house right now. And I believe you said yes. That's not how I read it. I just want to clarify on that.
What I'd say, by what I said, wait for administration to come back with options for each individual property.
Okay.
So
it's not read as somebody can just move into the house as is.
Not right now, no. But just see what they come back as and what that looks like.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Stroud?
And we're removing options to include selling the properties as is through a real estate listing? That we are?
Removing as is.
Removing as is. CEO?
I just have a bit of a concern about how open this is, looking at every individual property, and if we can move it, 5 yards or whatever, there's a lot of variables there that we could be looking into this for the next couple of years if we're looking into every single option. The way it was set up before was we were looking at demolishing them, salvage and demolish, and that was the options. That's straightforward. It's quite clear. It's quite defined. But at the moment with this, it's pretty wide open, And if we could narrow it down a little bit, that would make it much easier for us to be able to do something.
So we're looking for easier, or I guess that's my question. We're looking for the easiest solution?
I'm an engineer. I'm always looking for the easiest solution.
Well, I'm just saying. There are some. Like I said, when we first engaged in this topic some time back, we talked about turning them all into green space and parks, and that never ever got put on the motion. It was left off. I assume it was left off for a reason. I'm an expert in building parks. The idea of putting a park here, a park here, a park here, and having houses in between them is silly, right? It doesn't make any sense. Could it be an empty lot? Sure, but it doesn't mean that someone else couldn't own the lot. You could put cows on it or anything. Like it has a value. It's a space. Not that anyone's going to start cattle ranching down there, but what are we going to do with the lands? Like, it's great. There's 9 properties is the intention that we'll have 9 vacant properties added to our inventory that will carry on for the next eternity. I'm looking for what are the best options for each property. I can appreciate that it'll take some time, but how many million have we got invested into this already? And can we recover a little bit of it on the way? If we have to demolish a house and sell the property for its market value so it can be used for gardening or whatever, who cares? I think those options need to be looked at.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. Councillor Dogar?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A lot of good discussion and good points coming out from my colleagues. Administration should work out the options, all these options, and then we all should also take the consent of the stakeholders from whom we have to get the property or decide their fate. Thank you very much.
Does anyone else have any comments or debate points before we go to vote? Yeah, Councillor Shrub.
Jade read out the motion.
Through the chair, council, the motion is casted on the screens before you as well, but it will read as follows: that administration review and bring forward options for the lands acquired as part of the Draper voluntary buyout for council's consideration, options to include selling the properties through a real estate listing.
Does council have any more comments or debate points before we go to a vote? Councillor Ball, do you have any closing statements?
No.
Thank you. I'll call for a vote.
In favor.
Thank you, Councillor Grannison. Councillor McGrath, your vote?
I oppose.
Thank you. Thank you, and that's passed 9-1. Thank you, everyone. And thank you for joining today's meeting. Marcy Cho, Kinmus Compton. Right now, this closes the public meeting. We'll be going into in-camera and take a 5-minute break. Thank you.